Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of the WHIPPERSNAPPERS podcast, where us young folk take on the extravagant of literature, something like that.
We'll figure it out later.
This week, we will be talking about books on school reading lists and our experiences with them and our thoughts and whatnot. So I will introduce us all. First off, we have me, your host, April the Cheerweasel. Next, we have the robot, Anthony. We have the dragon,
Hello.
Corey. Orville,
Bonjour.
the Pokemon. We
Hello.
have Jess.
Wait, I have to introduce myself. No one knows who I am.
Oh yeah, that's right. These are the right boys. We have Orville and Jess, the sons
Greetings,
of the fabulous John and Jaji Wright.
Neither of us are very human, so have fun with that.
Yeah.
And Jess is a hobbit. Then we have
think we're not
Pierce,
quite
who
sure.
is a devil dog. And as far as writing, me and Pierce are both in Forbidden Thoughts.
Wait, a devil
And-
dog like a marine or like the food?
Raw.
Probably like a Marine because he is a Marine.
Or is it both?
I thought like an actual demonic dog, like a hellhound.
Oh,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh.
Devil dog makes
both.
me think of like a
devil dog,
Twinkie. I'm
devil dog
sorry.
being a devil dog.
Yeah, I don't know why, but Devil Dog's making me think of like a Twinkie or like a
Twinkie.
tasty cake.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
named a dessert after us?
No,
No,
hellhound.
there is a devil dog dessert. It's
Were we supposed to
That's
be
why.
talking about schools?
We're supposed to be
or
talking
something?
about book reading lists, but I don't know where this is going. I'm trying to control
going
it, but
to the
there's a lot
pastry
of you
section
guys.
of the supermarket. That's where it's going.
He's right about
Okay.
that one.
I'll do it later.
No, here's
Okay,
Bye-bye.
anyway, this is all of us.
to talk about supermarkets, and then we're going to cleverly segue into schools, and then we're going to start talking about sweets.
What are you talking about, Joss? We're silly people. We're just
That
gonna
was my
start right to the chase.
But I didn't.
Getting to the chase.
Now we're
Let's
just
talk
talking
about
about.
terrible is she?
Don't talk
April,
about talking.
Short order.
Yeah, okay, I will do the order on which I see us on the screen. So we will each take turns, like polite people that we're supposed to be. And
Never. Okay.
Anthony, then Corey, then Orville, then Pierce, then Jess, and then me.
Sorry,
we'll
I'm
go
acting
like that.
silly that I normally am.
Just April, prompt us because we don't see the same order that you do.
Yeah, that's why I just told you the order.
No,
Anthony,
sorry, I wasn't
Corey,
listening.
Orville, Pierce, Jess, me.
I'm not gonna remember that.
So I will prompt you though. Okay, let's
good.
control the madness. Anthony, you can go first. What is your thoughts or experience, dramatic flashbacks to school reading lists?
You know, honestly, I didn't hate as much of it probably as some of you. There were some awful books. The Scarlet Letter is a disaster, which is odd because I actually like Nathaniel Hawthorne's short story, The Black Veil. Letter is a unholy disaster.
Actually, it's quite holy.
Probably the worst book I've ever read. A Separate Piece is awful book. Really bad.
What's it about?
It's about, I don't know, two kids are like in a private school, and one of them is absolutely, completely, totally, brilliantly perfect. And I mean, like, seriously, they like say that outright.
Ah,
And one of them
Amazing.
isn't, and he pushes him out of a tree and he breaks his leg, and then like they're gay. Who cares?
What?
boring. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. That's really the book. But
That's literature.
No, it's not
Yeah.
literature. It's just a book.
it's anti-literature.
literature, it's why we all hate literature here.
No, it's not. It's not considered literature.
It's a
I-
book. There's a big difference between literature and a book.
It's
I would say
literary.
that.
Literary, yes.
It's the
I would say
literary.
that
It's the fiction that
really
the.
crappy. It's crappy books.
We've been having a conversation, I think, on Discourse about. Weren't we having a conversation
On
about
Litfic, yeah.
literary stuff?
Oh yes.
Well, we might have.
I'm going to write. I'm writing an article on that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that could
On
even be a
Litfic
whole nother
versus-
discussion.
Well, we'll just call it a terrible book for now, because I
Mhm.
think that's uncontroversial.
Okay.
You read Dickens. Dickens, Great Expectations. Hated it.
Ugh.
Terrible book.
Listen
Dickens.
to it. It
A
was.
Tale of
I didn't hate it, but it was just kind of.
A Tale of Two Cities. I actually really like that book. Christmas Carol is one of my favorite books, so I don't hate Dickens. I just hated Great Expectations. A Christmas Carol is amazing. I love that book.
Okay.
Let's see. And I read some short stories that were really terrible. Kate Chopin's going to get some love here in the hate category.
The
Yes.
love
The what?
Yeah. Kate Chopin. Awful. I mean, I know I haven't even read a novel of hers. I read a short story of hers, and you want to stab your eyes out.
I read a
It's-
novel and a short story. They're pretty much they were the same theme. It was.
She's not a bad technical writer. She just writes about awful, awful things. And
Yeah,
she
her
makes
craft's all right,
excuses- Yeah,
but
she makes excuses
That
for
is-
awful
I
people.
think that's the theme of storybook writing. Not storybook writing, of school literature writing.
I mean, with that said, I actually did like a lot of it. I liked a lot of the short stories. Flannery O'Connor I was introduced to in school, and she is, I think, the greatest short story writer ever. Loved her. A Good Man is hard to find. Brilliant, brilliant story. Let's see. We read a book in middle school called Tangerine that nobody has ever heard of, but it was a brilliant book, and it was like sort of a horror novel. Great. Read The Giver, which is overrated, but okay.
You hear me?
The Giver is a good book. Yeah, I liked a fair bit of it, actually. In all fairness, the school reading list, and I liked some of the younger stuff I read. Holes, good book.
I like that too.
The Sarah Plain and Tall series, which is like a pioneer book series. Pretty fun books, good for little kids. Yeah, if I had to talk about the two biggest disaster novels that I read for school reading list, it would be.
Wait.
You're
One,
cutting off a second.
You're
Are
cutting
you
off.
still there, Anthony?
And two, when you say disaster novels, do you mean novels about disasters or novels that were disasters?
Novels that were.
I'm pretty sure he means that we're disasters.
Were.
Hold on.
Novels
I'm gonna
about
go-
disasters are fun.
Gonna go close my window.
Are we good?
I think so. Continue.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry about that.
yeah. The Scarlet Letter is the worst book I've ever read, bar none. It's a horrible. I don't know how I finished it. I started in later years SparkNoting books, and I'm not ashamed of this. I started using SparkNotes to read my books, and I despise the Scarlet Letter. I did finish, and I don't know how, but it made no sense, and it was morally repugnant, making excuses for this woman who committed adultery and demonizing the people who were upset that she committed adultery, which, yeah, that's a horrible thing to do. One of the people she committed adultery with was a preacher, which, yeah, that's terrible. And you're supposed to sympathize with her, and I just didn't at all. And things were happening that didn't make any sense. And oh my God.
I had other reasons
uh,
for it, because I kind of understand where he's trying to say these people they're, I guess, fulfilling the letter of the law, but they forget the idea of mercy and forgiveness. But
I get that, but I don't know.
I'm sorry,
Keep
but
going.
when the 5-year-old child, she just swallowed a King James Bible and is speaking the perfect King's English when she's 5.
Yeah.
What are we talking
That's
There
a
about?
bit
was
of
this
The
whole
Scarlet
thing.
Letter.
breaking the suspension of belief.
Oh yeah.
This whole thing with the priest Dimsdale and I can't even remember the name of the woman, what her name was. Hester Prynne,
Hester Prynne.
right? Hester, the priest who she committed adultery with, her husband figured out that he was the guy, and he was working with him. And I swear to you, this was the case. He directed evil impulses at the priest that made him sicker as the story went on. Didn't actually do anything. Acted nice to him. but the evil impulses he
How?
directed
What?
made him ill. It was
How?
terrible.
Now, if it
No.
was about him having like telepathy or something and secretly being able to manipulate people like
that
that,
would be
that would have made it
hilarious
a lot.
and awesome.
That would be
Or
interesting.
even if he like, or even if he did something like with witchcraft and actually cast a spell instead of, ooh, I don't
No,
like
it
that
was
person.
evil thoughts. He apparently Dimsdale, the priest, was so attuned to the spiritual that by thinking evil thoughts at him, it made him ill. And
That's
I
dumb.
couldn't believe how bad that was. It was. I'm like, how?
I will just say this for the sake of time.
Yeah.
Get that, the Scarlet Letter's bad. What was the second disaster?
A separate piece.
Oh,
A
That's,
separate piece.
boy, that sounds
Okay,
boring as
first off, boring, horrible book. Really, really, really boring. I can't emphasize enough how boring it was. And character was the most unlikable person in the world. And everybody in the class, he had this obsession with the perfect kid, Finney, whose leg he breaks by pushing him out of a tree, by the way. He intentionally pushes him out of a tree because he's jealous of him or something. And he has an obsession with this kid. And the entire class was convinced that they were gay, which the teacher was adamant that they were not. So I looked it up. I checked what the author said, and he confirmed they were very gay. Very easy to tell. Like, we're not reading tea leaves here. It was really obvious.
You're not-
And then they had all of these.
But why the entire
active-
class?
So obvious. We were all like, we were talking with the teacher and like arguing with her. That it's like, come on, it's all right there.
Your whole class thought they were gay. I thought you meant the entire class in the book was gay.
Oh, no. Not what I mean. I mean, my English
Okay.
class. No, Jean and Finney, I think their names were. And then, just to top it all off, Finney dies at the end. But he doesn't die for any, like, sacrificing himself or for any real reason. He breaks his leg again and then dies in the operation to fix his leg. There is no reason for
That is
this.
the lamest way to die.
Reason for this. None.
Excuse me.
Pointless.
Someone must have been thinking evil thoughts at him really hard.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course.
They were. I think it was Jean's evil thoughts that.
What's your question, Orville?
Oh, good. You can hear me. I was wondering because what's your name, Mr.
If we all talk over each other, I'll try and
Okay.
make sure people don't get talked over too much.
Oh, good. Sorry. Continue, Mr. God Robot Guy.
Anthony.
Wait, did you have a question though?
No.
Nothing.
I was just wondering if people could hear me.
Oh, okay. If
Yeah,
you're wondering that
separate-
on the side of the chat here, just ask here. Anyway, continue, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, a separate piece. They have that unlikable kid who, let's see, he pushes his friend off of a tree and then is terrible. And they had another kid who, I don't know, somehow goes insane. I can't remember why. I mean, literally insane. Not like, he acts weird. I mean, he's like, basically should be institutionalized.
This book
they have
sounds
this-
boring.
Oh, it's so boring. It's the most boring book you've ever read. There's nothing interesting happens the entire book. And is so utterly pointless. You wouldn't believe. So pointless. I don't even know why he did it. I guess because it's literary. It's, it's the, I don't know, maybe literary people do it. I'll move on.
I'm
Who's
coming to the
next?
conclusion that literary fiction is basically just how boring can I make this, but then how obscure can I make it so it's really difficult to go
And how
through.
miserable.
Yeah,
and
So
so
how hard can I make this to read?
how boring can I
basically.
make the plot, and how miserable can I make the characters?
Some
Oh, we have a question from the chat, guys.
Where
Ben
do I see
asked
this
if
chat?
we have read the chat. If on our Hangout thing, if you move your cursor up in the left corner on the little toolbar on the side, the blue little
Q&A
speak
thing?
bubble
Yeah.
chat on the video,
There it is.
Ben asks, have we read I Am a Genius of Unspeakable Evil
Oh,
Um,
and I want to
Oh,
be your class
what?
president. Yes, I
yeah,
did.
yeah.
I love that book. It's hilarious.
Oh, what?
That-
No,
alright,
I've never
that-
heard of it.
I'll
I've not.
explain
Me neither.
quickly. I'll explain
Okay.
quickly because it's actually hilarious. It's sort of the Boss Baby thing. Seems like it might be based on it, but he's like this 12-year-old kid who goes to a middle school and fakes that he's really, really stupid. But meanwhile, like in his basement, he is running a massive empire of offshore businesses and is super rich and is very evil. And one day, like a really mean, popular girl is going to run for class president. So he decides he's going to run to be the class president. And the book is about him trying to become class president of the school. And it
That sounds
ends with, of
interesting.
course, he loses, of course, at the end of it. And assembly full of people, he starts talking about how horribly evil he is and how much he hates them all. And then he realizes he just gave himself away. So he wets himself so that everybody thinks he's just crazy. And then he decides he's going to raise the school to the ground with bomber jets. He literally sends them to the school until someone goes up to him and is like nice to him, and he decides to change his mind. And it's
Oh, good.
hilarious. It's a really funny book.
Oh, good.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Anthony, is there anything else you want to say on your turn, or should we go on to Corey?
No, you can. I would have moved on, but I wanted to talk about that because I love that book.
Oh, good.
Got
So-
it. Corey, your turn.
All right, so my reading list, there's some books I read in middle school that I don't terribly remember. The only one I actually do kind of is one I remember fondly, and that was Twelfth Night by Shakespeare.
Oh, I love that story.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
in it. No,
Yes.
wait, I
I
wasn't
saw
in it. I
my
was
sister
in
was in it.
something else. I was in.
No, you were in As You Like It.
Yeah, I was in As You Like It, but I remember that story.
I
I
believe
love
this
that
is
story.
What You Will, then, I think's the other name for it. I could be wrong, but the books that I really liked was all of Shakespeare, and there's one book that hesitant to recommend it because it has some very mature things in it.
No,
What?
I'm not going to read a book that has mature things. That means it's bad.
There's some pretty dark stuff in it. It's not for the faint of heart, and it is you might not want to read it. It's called The Kite Runner.
No,
And
I'm not reading it.
I've seen some bad reviews of it. That's interesting that you like it.
It's really well written, and well, the thing is, I read it all in one day. So anytime, I told the teacher that she was like, okay, fine, you don't have to read the other book that the author wrote, Khalid Hosseini, I think his name is, but I would keep threatening to spoil it, but then I'd end it all with, so this happens, and then Amir gets eaten by space moths. It was always space moths. But it's like it's about a guy who like flees from Afghanistan as the Shah of Iran is being overthrown by the Ayatollahs, and actually no, it's might not be the Shah being overthrown by the Ayatollahs. It might be them being taken over by, I think, the Soviets. I don't know precisely, but no, this is in Afghanistan, so it's the Soviets. The Shah's in Iran. What am I thinking? But it was well written, but I kept threatening to spoil it. There wasn't really any space moths in it, but yeah, I know. The books that I loathed, I will have to agree with Anthony. I've not read A Separate Piece, but I have read Great Expectations,
The Scarlet Letter.
and The Scarlet Letter. And then
Great Expectations about.
it's about a
Vitamin
guy. The basic premise is a guy, a kid, like gives, a kid gives a prisoner who had just washed up on like the moor that he was on, gives him some food, and then the prisoner ends up becoming rich and giving him a lot of money, and then the kid becomes like miserable and stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those pointless books.
That's
Yeah.
boring. Why do they make us read boring stuff?
I don't know. But here's the thing. Then the book that I despised the most, I think, out of a bunch of them, was Kate Chopin's The Awakening, or as I like to refer to it, Marriage According to Gloria Steinem.
Who?
I think I
Glorious Gloria Steinem. She's a really famous and kind of nasty feminist.
Oh.
Yeah. Shut up, computer. My Outlook things are not out of date. Thank you very much. Sorry. But anyway, there's a bunch I actually really liked. Like all the Shakespeare stuff. I read Romeo and Juliet.
That's because Shakespeare's good.
10th grade. I don't think we read anything in 10th grade. But
Hey, do you think Romeo is a cad?
No.
Kind of.
No?
No
I
one
would
else
say
thinks
no.
that except for you.
A bit, but he's redeemable.
Oh,
I think
okay,
I
that
wouldn't
makes
say
sense.
that because I love Romeo and Juliet. I think it's underrated because people misunderstand it so much. I would say that Romeo is a starry-eyed romantic and a moron.
Yes.
Seriously,
Yes,
like
he is that.
I'm not
I'll
saying
give
that
you
like
that.
as
That's
I'm not
better,
trying to insult the work. I think it was intentional. I think that Romeo was an idiot. He has this obsession with Rosalind, his previous love, and then he gets one look at Juliet, and bam, going to
Marry the girl.
destroy
That
his
day.
entire families and start a war because of this. And
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
already in a
I don't
war.
think he's a cat, though. I wouldn't call him a cat.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you're right. He's an idiot. That's what he is.
but
He's an idiot struck by love.
yeah, exactly. But the
Love.
A fake, immature sort of love.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
More of what's I can't say the word.
Infatuation.
Infatuation.
Thank you.
Infatuation.
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
a good way to put it. It's a teenage love, puppy
Yes.
dog love type of thing.
Mhm.
And then everybody is killed because of it, so it's a cautionary tale.
No.
The other
no.
book-
Never tells anyone about it. Get back to the thing, Mr. Cody. Corey. Sorry.
Corey, yes. The other books that I had to read were not ones that I had to read in school, but I had to read over the summer. And the two I hated were there's a book called Bluefish by Pat Schmatz.
That's an interesting
That's a
name. I
great
like it.
name.
It's a very unfortunate name, and it was about a kid who had to learn how to read. And
What?
yeah, he was trying to learn how to read. He's in
The
like the
Bluefish
10th grade.
what?
The book is called Bluefish.
It's a book about a kid trying to learn to read.
Oh, that's not something I want to read about.
Well,
I
here's
know
the
that.
here's the catch.
It would be funny
He also-
if that's the first book a kid reads, is a book about a kid learning to read.
You'd
Yeah,
never want
Well,
to read again.
it's the problem is the main character has anger issues where he constantly gets into fights. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Yes, you'll be fine.
All right. Well, when he gets into anger issues, the way it's described is just the most bizarre way possible.
Oh?
It's described as fight juice suddenly running through his veins, which makes him sound like he's excreting something. It's like, okay,
Fight you?
fight juice.
That's so
Ew,
stupid.
that just sounds
It is.
gross.
What?
The only worst descriptions I've ever heard was either from the Eye of Argon or from like a YouTube channel
Eye
that
of
just reads
Argon was a
horrendous
great
fan
book.
fiction.
That sounds like bad fan fiction. Seriously.
It does.
I will say there are settings in which fight juice could be used and it'd be perfectly fine, but this
Fight
does
juice
not sound
sounds like a
one.
type of alcohol, doesn't
Like
it?
just a regular juice, a juice that makes you good at fighting, but fight
No,
just running
That
through
would
your
be
sound like a
veins.
type of alcohol, like type of.
Yeah, it's a drug thing. That,
They're not drugs. It sounds like an alcohol, like another name for an alcohol.
Yeah.
definitely.
Anyway.
At a bar,
Come to the bar where we can fight you.
juice.
Yes. There was one other book I had to read that I
Oh, boy.
absolutely despised over the summer, and that was a book called A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest J. Gaines. And it was about like the civil rights era and stuff. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing. You can do that
Everyone
real
cares about
actually.
the civil rights era, right?
No, there's a book I read in, this is actually one of the other ones I remembered in middle school called Warriors Don't Cry, and that was written by one of the girls from the Little Rock Nine. Do you guys know what
I
that
know
is?
about those girls.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Were they a good book?
It was a really good book. I don't know what her political leanings are, but that book was really good. I still remember parts of it today.
Oh, good.
because it was very, very vivid.
A lesson before dying was not like that.
A lesson before dying. What happened? The premise of the book was a black guy, a black man, a young black man was driving a car for some friends. He didn't know, but they were actually robbing a liquor store, and they ended up killing the guy in the liquor store, like the person who owned it.
Okay.
Oh, so it's a crime drama.
Well, he wasn't supposed to be involved, but he ended up because he was driving, and he didn't know he was,
That's not
driving
the
for
premise I've heard.
crime. He got sentenced to death, and basically the defendant said, you shouldn't do this. It's like putting a hog on the electric chair, which, yes, is a horrible thing to say. But then every other character in the book was the nastiest group of people you could get.
To try and save this man's life.
They weren't trying to save his life. They were trying to make him a man before he was executed. The guy they had was a teacher who...
What?
So he could face his death
Yeah,
with some
let's-
crime. But
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, the teacher, the school teacher who was
Why
supposed
was
to
it
do
in the
this,
civil rights era?
it actually wasn't. It was like 20 years before, and like during Jim Crow law
Oh.
era.
Okay, that does make sense.
I
You'd
got
think it
you.
would be a crime drama, like the setup for a crime drama.
Except no, it's
In the background.
inevitable. But the thing is, the teacher, the main character is a school teacher,
Yeah.
and all he does is whine. That's the thing. There's some things, granted, he has every right to complain about, like when the guards are treating him differently
good?
because of his race. Perfectly fine for him to say, yeah, that's wrong. But when you're complaining that the kids you're teaching don't like you
Oh no.
because of your race,
Maybe it's because you whine all the time.
it's not that. He doesn't whine all the time with his students. He tries to do the whole tough love method, except he forgets the love part, so he's just kind of a jerk.
Oh.
He's
Yeah, I'm
complaining
such
that-
tough love because I forget
Yes,
love.
he's complaining that his girlfriend is kind of frustrated with him. His girlfriend is going through a divorce at the moment. That's gonna be putting stress on anyone. I'm sorry. Regardless of, the moral situation, it's gonna be stressing people out. And it became this. The only other character I liked besides about halfway through The Prisoner, then he started becoming nicer. Not the school teacher, but the guy who was going to die. The only other character I liked was the bartender who threw the main character out because the main character started a fight.
Yay!
And then the main character complained about being thrown out of the bar.
Oh,
I
shut up.
wonder why.
I know too. Yeah, but I had a similar complaint to the Scarlet Letter, in that we didn't even read the
After you read that
prologue.
book, after you read those books, did you have a hangover from all the fight juice you drank?
No, that was the year before. I was fully over that. But no, with the Scarlet Letter, the first part you read's a prologue of a guy discovering like a court manuscript and deciding to write a story about it. Except he doesn't decide to write a story about it. It's 30 pages. It's like the first 4 pages are him finding the manuscript in the customs house he works in. The next 30 or so is him agonizing over, should I write a story about this? Because I want to write a story, but I have some long dead Puritan ancestors that just might not approve of it.
Should we do something? We should do something. Should we do something?
Should we do this something?
Yeah, exactly. But here's the
Let
thing.
me think. Do I have an example of that? It's kind of like going, I kind of want to do something. But do I?
Here's the thing.
If at the start of this, we just said, okay, hey, we're going to talk about this. Should we talk about this? I think we should talk about this. Should we talk
And that for an hour.
Wow.
Exactly. Now here's the thing. I have Amish ancestors. I have Amish relatives who are still alive. I don't know them, but I know they're still alive. And I don't write about Puritans. I write about freaking dragons and wizards and sorcerers.
And more dragons.
Yes, and more dragons, because dragons make everything awesome. I don't
Yeah,
fucking
it's
care
true.
what my Amish ancestors are going to say. Are they going to look down on me? I don't care.
Aren't they dead?
I mean, if you're, I
Even
mean,
the
if you
ones that are
should,
still
like, you should
alive.
write what you want to write and not care about
Yes,
what
and then
a
the
handful,
next
even your
chapter you
friends
write.
think sometimes. Like, unless you're having someone critique, but you shouldn't really care what literary people or most people say that you should write, much less care about what your dead ancestors think you should write.
Well, then, guess what? The next chapter, it's even worse. The next chapter is just the description of a door and a crowd in front of the door, and nothing else. There's nothing that actually happens. It's just a description of a door that remains closed and a crowd that remains standing, and then a rose for no apparent reason. The rose never shows up in the book again. I'm like,
Wow.
anyway, that was cathartic. Oh wait, no,
sounds
there was,
like
there was
advertisement they would run on Welcome to Night Vale.
yeah.
What?
Oh, that does sound like that.
What are we talking about?
What are we talking about? I missed it.
We're talking about the Scarlet Letter, the Night Veil, and whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, the Scar.
There's
Look, my big
Japan, but
issue
I'll-
with the Scarlet Letter, yeah, they're all terrible. All the people in it are terrible. All of them. The
Yeah.
town is. Hester is.
The teacher.
Dimsdale is.
Yeah, the teacher asked
All
me, you know,
terrible.
yeah, Corey, you have to figure out a character that you empathize with for this project. It's like, what character? I mean, I know you hate the book, but what character do you empathize with the most? My response: the reader.
That's what I was about to say. I was literally about to say the reader.
And, like,
Poor
that's who I
Sam had to
empathize
read
with.
about a door for half a chapter.
I think Chloe
and the door's
emphasizes
not even
with
doing
the
anything.
door. I think he emphasizes.
I mean, they
with
could have
that
been
door
breaking
as
into the
opposed
door.
to The chapter.
No, the door was just literally, he was describing, like, it was down to, he was describing what kind of wood it was made of, what kind of iron was used in the studs in the door. I'm like, I just need to know their iron studs.
Ow! That physically pains me, even just hearing about
You know, the funny thing about Hawthorne too is that he has a story called The Black Veil. I believe that's really not bad. Like, the dude could write. He wasn't a
He just
total
did it.
hack. Dickens was not a bad writer. Dickens had
Right, I
some
love The
really
Christmas
good
Carol.
stuff.
Great
Love that
Expectations made me want to tear my eyes out.
Yeah, I love A Christmas Carol. It's one of my all-time favorite books. But Great Expectations was terrible.
And then we move on to Kate Chopin, but
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, Kate Chopin.
We'll hold off
Okay.
for her later.
Anything else you want to wrap up with your little turn, Corey?
Let's just say we will be throwing some fire when we get to Kate Chopin, but until then, I will hold off.
Orville, your turn. Hello,
Orville?
is he there?
Did we lose Orville again?
I don't know. Jess, everyone else.
I'm here, but Orville dropped.
Okay, well,
Just dropped off.
Pierce, while we wait for them, do you want to take your turn?
Sure. All right. Well, I was fortunate to be homeschooled for basically almost all of my schooling, so my school reading lists were awesome.
I'm back. I'm
Yeah.
right down.
Okay,
So,
we're taking Pierce's turn while we wait for everyone to get on.
Oval. Oval.
I can relate with
I-
Pierce because I was homeschooled too,
Oh,
so my
What?
reading was always awesome as well.
You sure you seem pretty dead?
So I don't remember much from middle school.
I don't believe you.
But my high school list, I got to read Beowulf, the Seamus Heaney
Well,
translation, which I think had just recently come out, which is one of the most awesome translations of Beowulf I've seen. I still haven't read Tolkien's yet, but that's on the to-read list.
Which translation was this?
The Seamus Heaney one, where he's got it side by side. He came out. Gosh, how long ago was that now? Maybe
Hi
he came out
again.
in, like 2008.
He's back.
But the way they published it,
We'll have you go
it
first.
had his translation where he tried to keep both the
Now what are we talking
the
about?
Anglo-Saxon rhyming scheme from the Old English and also tried to make it sound good as a poem in modern English.
Sounds difficult.
They do a good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, he had to make it alliterate so that it was like the Anglo-Saxon poetry, and then still work in modern English. So that was a treat to read. And then throughout the rest of high school, we followed that up with the Song of Roland, and then G.K. Chesterton's Ballad of the White Horse.
You had a lot of good stuff to read in high school.
And then
Hey, Jess, can you do me a
Farm
favor?
made its way onto the reading list kind of by accident, since I was doing some other class, and I like spotted it in the big box of books underneath the classroom table, and just kind of started reading it instead of doing my other schoolwork. And then my mom found out and was like, you know what, just read that book for the rest of the day and catch up on the other stuff tomorrow.
Yeah, I can talk.
Okay, good. I muted you when you were yelling at Orville when you're.
No, Orville's yelling at me. Orville's yelling at me.
Both of you are yelling, so I just kind of hit you down so you weren't interrupting people. Sorry. Anyway.
So I really
have
enjoyed...
thing from the chat again. Ben says, you want the point of all this symbolism when we were talking about the long, like chapter long description of a door. He said, this book was originally serialized, published a chapter at a time in the early newspaper or magazine, and I'm getting paid per word. Like what the explanation of why it was so long.
Yeah.
And Great Expectations
that, but you know
serialized
what?
novel,
It still
economic
sucks.
intensive was to make it as long as possible.
Oh yeah, they got
I
paid by the word.
understand that. I do. I sympathize, but it still sucked.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You might be able to make more money if you make the stories really good and then make a lot of them and then sell all of them and then you have more money.
I think that's everyone's
Exactly.
plan ever.
Yeah,
Nope.
except some
Then
people
you're
just
a-
want to make one long perfect work.
Unless you're a
And their
literary author, at
lives-
which point, if you're successful, you're a hack.
What?
Exactly.
All right.
I think
Any
the
other
author of
thoughts,
Song of...
Pierce?
I was going to say, I think the author of Song of Roland might have been paid by the word, given how many times the expression that someone was stabbed and thrown a spear's length away was thrown in after every other stanza.
Okay.
But
Orville, now you can take your turn once.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, what is your
my turn?
favorite and worst book you had to read for school?
Favorite book I had to read for school. What's the one we right after Hamlet?
Hamlet?
No, I'm thinking. I'm trying to remember what I've read in school. Before school, rather. I did read Hamlet. That was good.
I liked Hamlet's probably my favorite Shakespeare play so far.
I couldn't tell what it was about. I mean, what the moral was, I mean.
Well, that's
more decisive.
a long, complex.
When your ghost dad tells you to kill your uncle, you kill your uncle. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it. Right to put on play.
So really, it's a story about
Maybe
revenge.
can you think of your least favorite book you had to read for school, or you think of your?
Yeah, I can think of that. I'm reading it right now.
What?
Oh, really?
Called In Cold Blood. It is a story by Truman Capote, I think his name is. He's a good literary writer. His English is excellent.
Who is it?
Truman Capote.
Truman Capote. Okay.
Oh, Truman Capote. My mom loved whatever his thing where he meets with Harper Lee and they need to find the killer. Or whatever
No,
it
this
was
is
called.
What happened? What was it based off a true story?
Yes.
yes.
It's probably In Cold Blood. The story. I find that story excruciatingly boring. It's mostly I like description-heavy books. I heard, excuse me, I've read. Actually, I don't like description-heavy books, but
Sleepy Hollow.
I'm okay with description-heavy books. I've listened to not
Sleepy
Sleepy
Hollow.
Hollow, which
Thank
is just your mic is so loud, my voice is I can hear myself.
Here, I'll mute.
No one likes to hear me. One moment, this might help.
Only when it's not your turn.
Anyway, I've read Sledge and Sleeping Hollow, which was I haven't read, I've heard it, which was all description, and I read the Bible, and I like the Bible. So I'm okay with books that normal people think are slow, but In Cold Blood is boring.
There's actually stuff that happens in the Bible. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from the genealogies, but
No, even those are interesting.
yeah, they'll have.
After a while, it gets so ridiculous you start laughing. That's my experience. But anyway, In Cold Blood takes forever to get to the actual murder, and once it's done, it's too horrifying to even read. Because I have old-fashioned sensibilities, normal sensibilities, in other words. I have another book I read which made me. This one's a short story. Feather Pillow. I literally fainted afterwards. I don't know why. It's about I'm gonna spoil the surprise ending. A giant tick drinks and kills a tick in a feather pillow, kills a woman by drinking her blood slowly, and you don't find out to the very end. It's a horror novel. Another book I didn't like.
Big tick.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, I
And
fainted.
it also makes no sense.
Is this like the sequel to the Metamorphosis?
Anyway,
the Metamorphosis had a sort of weird, trippy quality to it that made it kind of readable, but that just sounds dumb. I'm gonna say that.
Yeah.
I actually had read something. Speaking of horror, actually, I read something.
Talk about horror. I don't like horror.
I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I read a short story by a guy named Arthur Machen, who my English teacher in college actually said is one of the influences on H.P. Lovecraft, and I can definitely see some Lovecraftian elements in Machenian elements in Lovecraft stuff.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Okay. Another book I did not like was a book called Whirligig, which I didn't even bother reading, even though it was for school. I kind of just.
What was it called?
Whirligig. It was about. It
Oh,
was another one of those. It was another one of those. Nothing really happens in this book. Stories. So, a guy hurts or kills a woman. He goes around putting up whirligigs, and every other chapter you see what those whirligigs did for people. It's
okay.
boring.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna. What's a whirligig?
Spiral.
One of those spinny thingamajiggers people hang outside there.
How does a whirligig do things? Like, how does it do things for people? I don't. Get that.
Magical whirligig?
No.
Psychic power.
Normal whirligig?
Normal whirligig.
That book is so
Inducing whirligig.
Weird thing. Right.
That's how boring it sounds. I don't.
Yeah.
It bores me hearing you.
Another book was The Maze Runner. I could not read that.
I actually kind of liked it, but
Oh,
I didn't
that's
hate
one
it,
of those
but-
newer ones. It was
I
like
didn't
one of
hate
the
it.
many
It's not a
dystopian
great
teenage
book.
kid.
no.
Yeah, I could not get through the opening. It was too slow and too
Wow.
I thought it was.
weird.
Maybe after like the
Very
third dystopia, because it was the Hunger Games, then what
Yeah.
was the other one?
I
The
didn't
other
read
one,
any of
whatever.
those.
And then that one, they all seemed kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I
don't
mean,
like
the Maze
those.
Runner had some interesting
now?
thoughts behind it. It wasn't a very good book. I'm not too
Uh-uh.
much, but
Mm.
it was readable.
Mhm.
I thought.
It was readable, but I didn't want to hear it or
It
read
was readable, just not to you.
No, not to
Yeah.
me. I
I get that.
am much more of a and I am
Flashbang Wallop.
not much of a reader. I only recently learned how to read. So the fact that I'm reading the Bible is kind of weird. But I like but some books I find are easy to read. Some modern ones and some old ones. But then there are just some books that but if the opening does not get me, I kind of have to slog through it.
Yeah.
I would
I'd like to
suggest.
point out that Redwall does
actually,
not have a very interesting opening.
Yet that one I didn't have to slog through.
Yeah, that's weird. I can't figure out what makes that good.
The
Redwall.
Redwall
Never heard of that.
itself isn't actually that good. It's not. There's nothing to hook you, and yet it's still easy to read.
Mhm.
I'm on the 7th book in the series, and I don't usually read.
It's a book
Yeah.
about the Middle Ages. If the Middle Ages was
It's
run by
not-
mice.
It can't be explained. It's a enigma.
It's like the Middle Ages. It's around a
But with
monastery.
mice. Yeah.
Uh,
It's a
Redwall
monastery
Abbey.
run by
Huh.
mice.
Except every single person in there is not a person, but they're like an animal.
Yeah. People are animals instead of people.
That. Wow. There's a book.
And the
So
Abbey
can you
might
think
pass
of
by
maybe
a
not
wall or something.
your most favorite, but Orville, can you think of any books that you were glad you read during, or that you read for school that you were happy reading?
Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, and Hamlet.
That's the ones
They-
I read.
As well as I also read As You Like It, which was another one of Shakespeare's plays. The one I was kind of in. Shakespeare's a really good writer.
No.
You don't say.
I see you two go.
Yeah,
Never
I
had
heard.
no idea about this. Who is the Shakespeare guy? I've never heard of him.
He's only the most famous author in all of Western history, other than maybe Homer or like Homer.
No, it's Shakespeare. It's Shakespeare.
Definitely Shakespeare.
I had an
Okay.
interesting experience with Shakespeare. My senior year, we were reading Othello, and it was kind of a slog to me at the time. And I looked at me and said, "Keep reading it, because one day, and then it's great." And it was weird because in class, I'm like falling asleep as we're listening to the recording. I'm
You're
like,
cutting out.
suddenly, I'm like, "Oh my god, I understand what they're saying." I kind of like, and then suddenly it became great. You just need to listen to it enough that you understand the language, and then it becomes really interesting.
Shakespeare's
But
a
you need to,
playwright.
yeah.
Shakespeare's a playwright. You're
that
supposed to see stuff along with hearing it.
I mean, once you really need to get used to him. Whoever goes next? Whoever goes next.
That's
I think,
Running.
getting your guys' names mixed up today.
Jess.
Jess, your turn.
Okay. So I read, I think, 3 books for school. Because I only started reading books for school last year, and I homeschooled this year. So I might read books for school next year. I read Macbeth, which I could not understand, even though I was in a Shakespeare play. I had no idea what was happening.
Macbeth is really good.
There was, like witches.
I
and
watched
Macbeth,
Macbeth,
and then
actually.
Macbeth killed people because he had an evil wife or something, and then he died. I think.
You pretty much summarized it perfectly.
Yeah.
That
You
Except
the way a guy except
suddenly it's a lot deeper than that.
yeah.
Yeah, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. I also read two other books, Things Not Seen and London Calling. Things Not Seen was about a guy who got turned invisible, but only his skin. And you would expect that would be, interesting. But then nothing happened. And then nothing continued to happen. And I didn't finish the book because nothing happened. Oh, I think you meant Blind Girl or something.
Interesting.
what
Okay.
book is this?
Is that kind of wrapped up? I want
no, I
everyone to
don't
have a
have the
chance
book.
to say something.
I have one other book.
No.
There was a book called London Calling, which was apparently about time travel, I think. But it was boring. And they didn't get to the time travel until over 100 pages in? I
Mm.
don't know.
Huh.
That's all I have to say.
So he read good. So
I
basically, my
read
brother read.
science fiction-ish books, but they just didn't do anything.
Just
Really lame ones.
really lame science fiction, which is
No,
almost worse than what
That's
we've been
lame.
reading.
It's just that it's boring.
Sci-fi, I think, is the term a lot of people
What?
use.
What is it?
Mundane sci-fi.
Mundane sci-fi.
That's a term. I remember Josh Young used that term for basically really boring sci-fi. It's like an official thing. You could look it up on Wikipedia or
Yeah, that's what
Galactic or whatever.
I got nothing to say.
Yeah. It would be hard science fiction in the sense that would be scientifically accurate, but even with scientific accuracy, you can do
No,
things
I
like
think the reason
have
I think
space
it turned out at the
The
end of
Martian.
book,
yeah,
first
The
one,
Martians.
I
The
think,
Martian's hard
Great
sci-fi.
book.
I
Yeah.
think apparently I never got to this, so it might make sense. But I think the reason why the guy was invisible was because of a blanket or something.
Oh, are you talking about the Invisible Man?
No,
No.
Seen Not Seen.
Oh,
No, the
seen not
Invisible
seen.
Man,
Okay, I
that's
know
kind
what
of the
story you're
plot.
talking about. Okay.
So boring.
Oh, I remember that book. I've read
Nothing
that.
I don't know
happened.
this
I thought
book.
there being time travel in it, but there
No,
was
a different book
he
had
got
time
turned
travel.
invisible
No.
because of the
There were
blanket.
two
I
books.
remember liking
The
it.
two
It was a long
books.
time.
One had time travel and it was boring, and one had an invisible guy and it was boring.
Oh, see, I remember reading it sort of. I don't remember much of it, so
See,
it may have
if
been.
the guy had turned invisible
Remember if it
and
was.
then robbed banks, and the book was written by Jules Verne, then maybe it would have been interesting. But it wasn't.
Yeah. I think I read it all, and because he met a blind girl. I remember liking it enough at least. And the blanket, it was. You find out later about the blanket, or I forget when you find out, but kind
I
of
never got to
entertaining.
that.
I forget what the plot was, but I read it, so.
I was busy reading.
But I don't
Red Wall.
remember it. I read it, but I don't remember it. So you can. It was
There's
entertaining
nothing to
enough,
remember.
but
Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
I think it's your turn, April.
that's kind of true. Yes. Okay. Well, being homeschooled all my life and never going to school, I can't really say much about school reading lists, but we're talking, and she had a couple interesting thoughts. The main thing that always gets her is whenever we go to the library, we'd be in there we'd just be bathing ourselves in books, finding whatever interesting books we wanted to get that week or whatever. And she would a lot of times see a kid come in who probably hadn't been to the library much and just being like, oh, this is cool, and starting to go over to like pick up a cool looking book or be interested or excited. And the mother just snatches it and says, no, that's not on the school reading list. You need to go get one that will get you more points. And she said that hurt her every time. And let's see. She had a couple thoughts about
As in,
because
like,
there's
points for their school.
for the test, like the school reading list.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll
I
start
know
with
what you mean.
about it. Reading thing where you
Really
read
is.
certain books and it gets you more points on the test or whatever. And I think she was saying that a lot of those tests are run by like a company or some sort of people. So it's like depending on whatever test the school buys that or the books you read that but they're for like
Ignore the summer reading list.
other stuff. But the thing is, the one thought she was having that I thought was good was when you're younger, like in middle
Your
school,
mother only has
you
one good thought? Maybe you should let some
one
respect
of the good thoughts. Just one of them. She has many. But anyway, don't mess with mothers.
The
I
only
didn't
good
do it.
thought.
She
You were the one who
Gosh,
said
you're
one
mean.
good thought.
Just
the
stop talking before you get sent to the lions again.
Into the what?
Anyway.
Lions.
I don't even know what that
Oh
means.
yeah.
The lion?
Anyway, April.
Okay. Let me continue.
What?
Um
Lions. Right? Control.
I can't
okay,
understand
when you're
what
younger,
saying.
you learn to when you're younger, you learn to read. But when you're older, you read to learn. So as far as reading lists go, when you're a young kid, it just shouldn't be like whatever kind of list or whatever. It should be what makes the kid interested in reading, because having a good love of reading is good so that you can read. And because there's a lot of content that you read that you can't get otherwise, or old stories or things like that. But it's good to learn to read. So younger kids' reading lists, like middle school, should be about learning to read and wanting to read. Older and you know how to read, it should be reading to learn things. But there's also the question of learning. Let's see. She said, for older kids, the point is to read. The point is to read to learn something. But what should it be? Like these. There was a big push where with realistic, like you were saying, Corey, making like getting things that relatable to like the
Not
disadvantaged
really
students
relatable.
or something.
Oh, are we
I
going to
Or
be
like
talking about realism in literature?
Unfortunately.
that's
Yeah.
part of it. Let me get through all my thoughts, and then you guys we can jump on
I
talking
get
about
the
it.
murder concepts.
But talking about, okay, so it should be younger kids. They should read to learn, or
They should read what
they should
interests them.
yeah they should want to. They should be about getting them reading, getting them letting their imagination goes places, what they're interested
Dr.
in. Some
Seuss.
Dr. Seuss.
yeah, that's for really little kids. But I mean, just like fun adventure stories,
Yeah.
or whatnot. I mean, Dr. Seuss is still good for anyone. But anyway,
That's
but
all
then
Dr.
when
Seuss
you're
is.
older, the question is, like she was saying in the 90s, there was this big push to get like relatable
Dr. Seuss is good for that.
disadvantaged kids or kids that have had harder lives. But do you really want everyone reading stories about horrible things that
would
don't
put someone
really?
off.
Yeah, and it wouldn't really. It's like, okay, the question is like, what should be kids be reading? Should there be some sort of? Should they be reading socially?
No,
And or should
whatever
they?
you're gonna say next about socially, no, they should not. They should be reading
Yeah,
stuff.
Should
well-
that
they?
is
Okay, wait. Let me
good.
keep talking. Should they read things that are relevant or things going on in the world today? Should they read things for the past? Should they read a mix of those, or like
April,
content?
April. If you want to read
Yes.
about things going on today, you read the newspaper.
That's true.
It's a lot
Can I-
simpler than that, I think. It's
May I
read
go
what you
on a
want
bit
to.
this?
Go ahead, Corey.
All right. Well, I'm writing up an article that one of the things I was always puzzling over is why suddenly is what's considered good literature or the proper literature, why is it always really, really realistic and mundane? If you
Why
look
is it
at
about stuff I don't care about?
exactly. Well, here's the thing. What we can see, because if you look, this kind of relates to the secret superpower I have that's completely useless.
Which is?
I can recite the original. I can recite the first 18 lines of the Canterbury Tales in original Middle English,
Awesome.
in kind of a Scottish brogue. Because here's the thing: if you look at, what's it? You look at Shakespeare. The three biggest plays he's known for is The Tempest, Hamlet, and Macbeth.
Macbeth? I
All
would think
three of
Romeo
them.
and Juliet.
And Romeo and Juliet.
Definitely Romeo and Juliet.
Well,
I wouldn't say The Tempest. I'd say Hamlet.
He
yeah,
said
Hamlet.
Hamlet.
He mentioned Hamlet.
Oh, I didn't hear. I heard Macbeth and yeah.
The Tempest, Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet. Well, here's the thing. With all of those, all but Romeo and Juliet have some level of fantastic elements in it. The Tempest, you have Ariel, who's a magical spirit, and you have a
The Tempest is about a magician.
A magician.
the big character Prospero's a wizard. You guys should know your mother wrote a
I
book
know.
about
I read
We
that
know
book.
what
It's
the
really
Tempest
good.
is about.
yes, I should hope so.
I would hope so too.
Macbeth has witches, prophecy,
Yeah.
and Hamlet has a ghost.
Yeah.
And madness. And Romeo and Juliet has an ancient blood feud, and it has sword fights.
It has
And then it has the Queen Mab speech too, which is kind of funny.
the what?
The Queen Mab speech that Mercutio makes.
Okay.
Oh
But-
yeah.
I remember that because I had to do it.
Yeah,
but,
you're like the funny fairy.
Yes, the Queen of Fairies. But
Midsummer
if you
Night's
look at
also-
Canterbury
and-
Tales,
A Midsummer Night's Dream has straight up fairies.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's a fairy in that. But Canterbury
Midsummer
Tales,
Night's Dream is wonderful.
Only all the point non-human
Yeah.
characters.
oh, yeah.
See,
Go ahead,
Basically,
Phil.
all the stories have some sort of element of fantastic things that are outside of our normal realm.
one moment. I
The
need to go.
Canterbury Tales, for example, they have stories that go from everything from like the one I did, which was about a scholar tricking a guy and screwing around with his wife, to there's stories about like martyrs and miracles happening, to stories about like talking animals. It was
So interesting stuff.
well, it wasn't just that; it had elements of the unreal and the fantastic. And the framing device for Canterbury Tales was, we're going on a pilgrimage. So, what we're going to do is, we're going to basically tell a story. And the reason they're going on this pilgrimage is because that that the saint that they're going to visit, Thomas à Becket, the meddlesome priest, as he's known, if you know about the history of that, is supposedly came to them in a dream or helped them when they were sick. I believe it was, if I remember, if I can translate correctly.
They help.
But here's yeah. What ends up happening is I'm writing an article, and John C. Wright has an article on it about a guy named William Howells, I believe. Let me quick check that. William Dean Howells. He was one of the editors for the Atlantic Monthly, and he wrote and basically John Wright basically just mostly quoted someone else's essay on him, which is quite fascinating. But the thing that he said was basically what Howell said was, you don't want characters that are from myth or from like an exotic time or place. You don't want bizarre and cool settings, and you don't want anything abnormal to happen with you don't want anything to happen that's
You don't want to
abnormal.
tell good
persons-
stories.
You don't want to
Yeah,
tell
exactly.
anything that the everyday
That
man
people want to
can't
read.
That's
say that
interesting.
they've done.
Exactly.
Nothing
Well,
interesting.
there's a reason that he did that, and that was because he was basically bribing people with a generous payment that the Atlantic Monthly gave. He was bribing people for the to write basically what amounted to socialist propaganda, because it was all about the common
working
man
man.
struggle. Yeah, exactly. And what ended up happening is that somehow, because he set that trend, that became viewed as more serious. And then this guy,
Even though it's less serious.
well,
Yeah.
it was more irrelevant. Then this guy named B.R. Myers wrote a piece called A Reader's Manifesto, and it's attacking these supposedly really famous literary authors. And what it turns out is they all suck. That was the short
Really?
answer. Yeah, they're like, what was it? What was the lab? It was furious dabs of tulip stuttering was one of the lines. It's like, how does a tulip stutter?
What does that even
What are we
mean?
talking about? What does that mean?
I mean,
It's like
it
something out of
sounds-
Eye of Argon.
It does sound literally grinding
Okay.
logs.
The thing is, I imagine
What
if
does
you
that
take,
mean, going screen release?
I don't know. But if you
Tom
take a copy
Simon.
of that and the Eye of Argon next to each other, you probably could have trouble figuring out what the difference is.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Tom Simon has this essay. Style is the rocket. Brilliant essay. One of the best I've ever read. And in it, he has a thing. It's hilarious. A scene from a literary novel about a woman has her arms cut off by
That's it. Annie Prohl.
falling
That's
on
the
them.
woman who wrote it. Because B.R. Myers.
Yeah, and she's going, and he has a thing where he goes, and then the blood spurted up, and then he would comment and go, "Okay, that's very great. That's not really what blood does. It's like slow motion." And then he goes, "That's very well and all, but shouldn't she be in extreme pain right now?"
Yeah, instead she's noticing birds darting about eating insects.
Exactly. It makes no sense. Like, why? That's not what you think about when your arms are chopped off. You think, "Oh my God, my arms are chopped off."
Yeah.
Maybe
Or you think it's only a flesh wound.
Yeah.
Maybe
And then
she's
you
actually
see
a
from blood
robot.
loss immediately and die.
What?
It's birds. That's not how it works.
Yeah, you did not think about birds.
Unless
Hey,
you've
look, my
died and you
arm
become a
goes up.
ghost,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then you
the
can see
birds
them
are
around.
around.
Just go slow motion. Wow, those are my arms. Like,
I mean, I could get not feeling any pain just from like pure shock as your body goes into shock.
you're
So
still a little more focused on the whole blood and arm thing.
yeah, you
My arm
notice.
got chopped
Wait,
off.
why can't I feel my arm? Why is it on the ground instead of? Oh look, pretty birdies.
There's a great scene in the show Justified where a guy gets his arm cut off, and the scene is him. He pauses for a moment forward to kind of grab his arm, and then he faints. And that's kind of a realistic reaction because you know what? When your arm is cut off, of blood very quickly.
Oh wait, there's a giant hole in your body. You mean you're
Yeah.
not? You're
Don't
going to
stop
lose
and say
blood?
pretty birdies.
And mind you, she has two. She has both her arms are apparently cut off.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I just noticed the fact that you have no arms. Oh yeah, I was too busy looking at buddies.
Okay, going away from the topic of armless bodies, I don't know if we ever really addressed the question. What should, like, what do you think high schoolers should be reading?
What they want to.
For school.
No. They should be reading
You should, I think,
stuff like, they should read stuff like Shakespeare, but they should also read modern stuff like Shakespeare.
Well,
Stuff
look, if you want
like great books.
you want to get
I
a kid
think-
to love reading, then you don't make them read something they don't like.
well, that's what middle
You
school is
say-
for.
Middle
That's
school.
But
why
I
middle
think-
school reading lists
Wait,
suck.
wait. No. I have a theory about this. Well, my dad has a theory about this. My dad thinks that the point of modern education is to make the students hate reading.
I can
That's
almost.
what they're trying to do.
He's right. Oh, he's right.
Yep. If you want
Yeah.
to have people like reading, you'd have them read stuff like Tolkien or
Or
the
Conan the
other great books.
Barbarian,
Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
you just do enough to get them
like a
interested
series
in
of unfortunate
something.
events.
Because it's no.
Even that.
You-
I haven't read it, but yeah.
No, wait. If the student gets interested in reading something, even if it's just one series, they're going to want to read that series. I got interested in Redwall, and I have read 6 books in it. And I don't usually read.
The thing that got me reading.
What they're trying to do is accomplish that,
Mhm.
and then they can just let the student
Yeah.
read.
But there's also, like that, like you said, you should get the person interested in reading. You should, first off, you should learn to read, but then you should read to learn. So if we must have a school system or things like that, and be reading things, we should do things that are good works and challenge you to, like,
Think about the world new.
yeah, exactly. Think
See,
about the world,
I don't
different
agree with
viewpoints,
that,
but
actually.
don't have anything that's like so painful or things
Right,
like
well,
that. I don't know. It's
I
an
actually
interesting
dis-
question.
Actually, because I think that if you're first off, I think that the entire school system, and I'm completely serious about this, needs to be torn down and reassembled from the ground up. I think it's
Yes,
much
because
Yeah.
better.
it's been corrupted
But
too badly.
besides that, when you look at like, what's the point of reading? The truth is, in real life, in the real world, you're not going to be reading to improve yourself. I read books like Harry Potter, like mystery novels and things like that, and fantasies. And I don't do it because I want to educate myself. I do it because wowee wizards, you know.
Exactly.
So
Here's the
you're
thing.
going to force kids.
I think I know.
You're going to
I
force
think I know.
kids to learn
I know
things
how
when
to
they're
solve-
not interested in reading those books or not going to like it. And you don't learn when you read something that you're not interested in.
I know how
You
to
just
solve the
learn to
problem.
hate learning.
I know how to solve the problem. Make kids bored. I don't mean school. I don't mean force them to be bored. But I mean if someone is bored, they're probably going to do something that's not boring. So if
Bingo.
you're bored and there's this book lying around and it's interesting, you're going to read the book.
I nearly.
You are absolutely right.
That's why I read Redwall. Because I was sitting in a library for a long time and went, I'm going to be, because I was in school and I was doing a school play and we had to wait in the library. So I just went, I should get something to do while I'm in here. So I got a Redwall book so that I could read when I was just sitting waiting for my time on stage to come up.
Exactly.
Yeah, here's the thing.
When you're mandating something,
wait,
you're
wait,
not
wait,
learning.
Corey's been trying to say something for a while.
What I was gonna say was with me, I'd mentioned this before when I got in. I think in the first Whippersnappers podcast. Unlike I think from what I can say, a bunch of you, a bunch of the people on here, I learned to read at a very early age. I had like probably a third grade reading level in first grade. My dad forced me to learn how to read. Anytime he passed a sign when we were driving by, he'd force me to read it out. So at first grade, I was pretty fluent reading wise. And all I read for a year was nonfiction because all I knew of fiction was Junie B. Jones, which is it's girls fiction. It's the most dangerous
So not
thing.
something you want to read.
No. So what ended up happening that got me addicted to reading and now writing is my mom got me to read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I was convinced, oh, I mean, the cover has some weird stuff on it, but let's be honest, that's just a cheap trick. And then I read it, and I kept reading it, and I kept reading it. I only read it until after I saw the movie. I'm like,
Corey,
wait,
that was like my exact experience with Sorcerer's Stone. You could have just described how I read that book. My mom bought it, showed it to me, and it blew me away.
Well, I saw the movie, and I'm like, wait, you can write books about things that don't actually exist and are actually kind of interesting?
Yes.
Hand it over. And I did, and that got me addicted. I moved on to Narnia. I actually haven't finished all the Narnia books yet.
Same. I haven't read the last one.
Me neither.
Heresy.
I know. Well, it's
Hey,
not nearly as bad as what
patient,
Dodger was saying
Brian.
yesterday.
Ooh.
Your mother was saying heresy.
Oh yeah,
Wait, what heresy did
that
you
was in the
say?
chat. But
What did
Yeah.
she
she
say?
said
that
she
Twilight
said
was-
Twilight actually isn't that bad compared to some things out nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like saying
I mean,
a bad
Jason
professionally written
exploded.
book is better than a bad, not professionally written book.
No, professionally
Besides-
written is all relative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Published and making a lot of money off of.
All the other books were published as well too.
yeah, that's
Yeah. Anyway, but
people like it is when it becomes professional.
yeah, that's the thing is we
and
have
people like that story, so it must hit some good chord with some people. That's
Exactly.
what Mother was saying.
my grandmother is a school teacher.
Mm.
And one of the things that she says is she has a collection of students, a lot of them in her SAT prep class. She teaches Latin and SAT prep that
Awesome.
don't just not read, but they're adamant about not reading.
Why?
because they hate it that
It's
much.
sad.
Because Dad's right.
Haha, the modern school system has therefore succeeded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have
I think-
advanced students who are adamant about not reading. I mean, something is very wrong here.
Well, here's
It's
the thing.
disturbingly wrong.
If you look at the things that they'd probably be like if they're playing video games, the big video games I have over here is I have Dark Souls 3, Skyrim, Destiny. Those are big ticket items. All of them are fantasy or science fiction. Well, actually, they're all a form of fantasy. Destiny is science fantasy. But these are things that people like, that lots of people like. But they don't
And
read it.
yeah, it requires less work to understand what's going on mentally, and I can do something and it allows me, and I have fun while doing it. Whereas reading, what most people are exposed to in school is this is
Sure.
not about something interesting. It's
Yeah,
hard
you're forced
learn
to
to
read
do.
stuff you don't
I
like.
kind of feel like, well, on the side note, I kind of feel like now that I think about it, video games are the worst kind of games. Not that they're bad. Video games are really fun, but they're not as fun as, let's say, role-playing games or board games or card games.
Mhm.
I
You don't
disagree.
agree with that?
I think that
Yeah.
that video games can be very fun because
They
they're
are, but
single-player role-playing games, basically.
That's
Well,
what
not all.
Skyrim and Dark Souls are, except Dark Souls is that for masochists.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently there are a
It's
lot of
ridiculous.
It's in the world.
Let's talk about something less video game related now. Like,
Okay, yeah,
Well,
sorry.
I have one more thought, getting us back to the books. Responding to Anthony, it is. I do agree that something, even like high school kids and stuff, making them read something they really don't want to read it never helps. You could have like a list of recommendations because people don't have the same tastes in what kind of stories they like. But as long as you have written well, that are interesting, that have things happening, that maybe just have like a suggestion list and maybe write book reports and stuff. But I don't know. I think
Here's another one
we shouldn't force
we
people
mentioned.
to do stuff, but we should have good things that make them, especially in high school, make them think or interesting.
My fourth grade
Or
teacher
just
got me
entertaining.
copies. My fourth grade teacher, she got me some books, and I only remember two of them. She thought I'd write because I was at a more advanced reading level. And the two books I remember were H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
I heard that.
It is.
Yeah.
what's the other one?
Artemis Fowl, The Eternity Code.
Oh, was that good?
I like that
Artemis
book.
Fowl. What?
Was that a good
You
book?
have?
Artemis Fowl is fun.
It's about fairies, except
Ooh.
like you meet a character who's an elf and a leprechaun, except it's spelled L-E-P, recon, like reconnaissance, because she's a lower elements police reconnaissance team. She's basically a one-woman SWAT team.
Ah.
The fairies in this world live underground,
That
and they're
even
also
sounds
like
really
hyper
cool.
technologically advanced.
That either sounds really cool or really dumb.
It is.
It's-
I've read it. I really enjoyed it when I was young.
it's
The later
really
books
cool.
aren't as good as the first three,
Wait,
but it's definitely worth.
when
The
you
first
say
books
it,
are definitely
you mean
worth reading.
It is really cool. It is really dumb, or that it's both.
It is.
It's
really.
it's more really cool.
Smarter than it has any right to be.
It's what?
The Eternity Code, it's smarter than it really should be, because it sounds like it should be dumb, but there's some clever stuff in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
entertaining.
yeah.
If anything, the characters,
The
stuff happens.
characters are
There's fun
fun.
characters. There's interesting things.
That's really what
Books I think are the best, but they're all pretty fun.
I
Yeah.
think that's what would hook people
Yeah,
onto a book,
I'd say so.
because
The
writing-
first one's about a teenager trying to catch a fairy.
A very smart
Except the
teenager.
teenager's a criminal mastermind, and the
Yeah.
fairies like got laser guns.
Oh boy.
And hypnosis.
They're not
Yes.
really fairies if they have laser guns.
They're definitely fairies. They just also have lasers.
They have magic.
They do have magic. The hypnosis, they do have magic.
Yeah,
But they also
healing,
have laser guns.
hypnosis, and they can kind of vibrate so fast they turn invisible.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's science fiction.
It,
No,
it's It's science
It's both.
fantasy is the best
It's
way to
both.
put it.
It is,
both.
but it's not
Yeah, it's kids'
fairies.
science fantasy.
Then
They are fairies. They just also have
no,
laser
they're
guns.
science fairies.
Well, sure, yeah.
They ain't from Midsummer's
Okay,
Night's Dream, but
fairies.
they're definitely fairies.
As long as the laser
They-
guns have
They
a
come off as
composite
fairies.
handle and
It's
not
really
steel, they
bad.
should be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Let's see.
Look.
Any other topics? I guess we'll wrap up the
Oh
chat
wait,
before
we
too
forgot.
long.
We forgot.
What?
Anthony
What?
and I were supposed to go bash Kate Chopin.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Oh, okay.
You're
And
like,
you still
that's
haven't
bad
recited
as shit.
Canterbury Tales.
Oh yes, I forgot to do that. Well, okay. Hold on. I'm gonna go find this on my computer.
Okay.
Well,
In the meantime,
I'll
Pierce,
throw,
you're still
You
there,
can
right?
recite it from
Yeah, I'll
memory.
throw my 2 cents
Really
in on the
anything.
what kids should be reading list. In my ideal world where I run the Department of
I
Education,
cannot hear what you're saying. What?
is
Talk
anything
louder,
coming
Mr.
through?
Pierce.
Yes.
We're hearing you. You're just talking quietly.
Oh, okay. In my ideal world where I run the Department of Education, hopefully by middle school, like April said, they've already been taught, like they actually like reading at that point. So by the time high school comes around, I think that's a good time to start introducing them to like the great conversation that Mortimer Adler talks about with his great books program of using the high school reading list to introduce them to like the great works of Western civilization.
Well, you can do that in
or if you're in
college,
Japan, Eastern
like what St. John
civilization.
does.
Do that in high
Or you could
school.
already start in high school.
Everyone will know. Oh, and more people will be in on the conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you start.
I think that's kind of my point. We should, in high school, like introduce them to, like, yeah, the things that of the.
The problem is that I think it'll just bore them, but okay.
You
Yeah.
have to pick the right books to introduce them to. Like, well, see, I've never understood why people hated reading Beowulf in high school.
Hated what?
Since I thought it was. So
Oh, I read
exciting.
Beowulf in high school. Well, yeah, that's probably the best book I've read. It's really.
It's about a dude who fights a monster. How can it not be good?
Yeah, exactly. 3 monsters.
We didn't get to read that. We got to
Goblin
read
of
the
some
literary book from the monster's perspective called Grendel, and it just sucked.
And the
Of course
Don't read
it
it,
sucks.
it
No one
sucks.
wants to read the book from the bad guy's perspective. Especially not Beowulf, where he dies at the end.
Yeah.
At some point, the guy should have to read.
Grendel dies.
So they understand
Grendel's mom
women
dies.
like,
They will.
Oh,
Jane
wait,
Austen.
you guys are
Dragon
talking
die.
over.
Hey, guys, everyone but Pierce, shut up.
Okay, and maybe in junior senior year, the guys should have to read something by Jane Austen so that they understand women, and women should have to read something by Edgar Rice Burroughs so that they understand guys.
Okay.
I love that idea.
I like Jane Austen. She's one of the 2 people whose purple prose I like. Her and H.P. Lovecraft,
I
who
was
are like
gonna
the
say,
I
exact
think a lot of
opposite.
good stuff about
What?
Austin from people I trust, actually. About Austin from people I trust, interestingly enough.
She is wonderfully sarcastic.
Mhm.
Oh, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I'd like her books then. What are they mostly about?
They're romances.
Yeah.
Then I might like them.
Pride and Prejudice is my favorite. It's
Oh,
the closest
wrote
thing I've
that?
read to like a romance book, but I love it. It is a romance book.
I'm reading through Sense
I
and
love it, though.
Sensibility at the moment, but
I think that
I
one
like
has some of the most enjoyable personalities in it.
Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like at the very beginning of it though, but from what I've read of her prose, I actually enjoy it as opposed to the prose of Great Expectations, where it's just describing meal after meal, and I'm like, get on with it.
Get on with it.
Exactly.
And that's why it's
Or-
Sparrow
yeah.
That
so
happens
great
with
because it's short.
the Red Bull series. They just have these sections where the author just writes about food for like a paragraph. And I don't know why.
Now, granted, if the food was kind of cool and
It
exotic,
may be, but I just kind of
Well, it feels like alien food, or
Don't-
food had something to do with the story.
or if it was still moving.
Can you
No.
fry? Can you
it's
deep
not
fry
that.
shoggoth?
It's just it may be perfectly delicious.
Probably.
It may be for a sense of what the world and stuff, but I just kind of end up not registering any of it because I want to get back to, killing vermin.
Anyway,
Fighting eagles.
then we're to move apparently on to Kate Chopin.
Excellent. Oop.
Yes.
All right. I
Put me on the
described-
other mic. I cannot join this conversation. Just for
Listen,
those-
because it's going to be a bloodbath.
Destroy her.
Can we talk about realism in stories? Because everyone
yes,
can
we're going
fail
to.
on that.
Yes.
Well, here's the. She's kind. We can segue from her into realism, and then I guess we could close out with the recitation of the Canterbury Tales in the original Middle English.
Okay,
Alright.
that sounds fair.
The Kate Chopin. I wrote. This is how I summarized. I was going to write an article, but it's. I got too angry in the article. It was. I was talking about these books I had to read, and one was. It was The Awakening by Kate Chopin, or as I like to call it, Marriage According to Betty Friedan, who is a nutty feminist. And it is about a woman trapped in an unhappy marriage. And this is something I've written before. Edna Pontellier is a Kentucky girl, a Orleans man who is often far away for business meetings, to the detriment of their marriage. And while vacationing at Grand Isle with their children, she meets a man named Robert, who flirts with her. A custom at the time to flirt with married women among the New Orleans officials. That's not supposed to actually be taken seriously. It's more like a compliment than it is a like, oh, you're pretty. I know you're married, but I'm gonna flirt with you just to say you're kind of pretty, but I'm not actually interested in you in that way, right?
Okay.
And Edna undergoes her awakening, discovering her independence and sexuality. You don't actually see this because this was written in like the 1890s, so they wouldn't actually show any of these scenes. What ends up happening is Robert, realizing that this woman is falling in love with him, wisely leaves. Meanwhile, Edna, instead of confiding in her married friend Madame Ratignolle, strikes up a friendship with Mademoiselle Ries, a cantankerous old piano player, an independent woman. Read miserable spinster. As the story progresses and the Pontelliers return home, Edna neglects social duties, instead taking up painting, and then beginning to experience other stranger and more antisocial behaviors, to the point where her behavior causes her husband to wisely send the kids away to the relatives. Mademoiselle Ries begins to draw Edna into her social circles with other self-styled avant-garde artists. Eventually, Edna has an emotionless, purely physical affair with Elsie Arobin, the town seducer, while also siphoning off money from her husband to live in her own home apart from him without his permission. Eventually, after Robert offers to marry her should she get divorced, which she turns down to remain independent, he leaves and Edna disrobes and walks into the ocean at Grand Isle, drowning to the cheers of many an unfortunate English student. Now, that
Okay.
yeah, well, what ends up happening, I describe her as when she could have tried to reconcile her marriage, but she went down the path of Mademoiselle Ries, who's a nasty and mean-spirited woman. She's not an artist. She's an artiste. She's the suffering artist that you all know. She's angry. She is angsty. She is hurt, and she's wounded and a broken person, and that just makes her art so special. And she's avant-garde as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
I need to,
Wait. She's a romantic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because she was miserable and
No.
suffers.
I don't think that's fair. Romantics are necessarily a bad thing to be a romantic. What
No,
she is,
like not like an actual one, like a Byron romantic.
oh yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
kind of like that.
I need-
But here's the thing. The way I put it is she begins to resemble her Reese, refusing to talk to her husband about their marital problems, associating with Reese's social crowd, made up of more miserable bohemian suffering artists, smashing glass, stomping on her wedding ring, buying a freaking house with her husband's money. All of this is motivated by selfishness. She's a character that, when she doesn't get what she wants after her awakening, either throws a tantrum by breaking things or figures out a way to get what she wants at the expense of others. She retains the vigor of her youth, and with that renewed vigor comes a renewed immaturity. The whole thing is nothing more but a selfish teen trapped in a 30-year-old woman's body, producing one of the nastiest protagonists to walk the fictional streets of New Orleans. That's how I put it.
That is a great description.
Very
She
elegant, my
becomes
friend.
immature.
okay. I need to leave soon, so I'll go quickly on Kate Chopin and then I'll leave. Here's what I think the sad thing is about Kate Chopin, because I've read a couple of short stories by her. The sad thing about Kate Chopin is that she is a good writer. She's an entertaining writer. She has a good eye for sarcasm and humor, and like she can turn a phrase. She's not bad. She just writes about these horrible things in people and has this awful philosophy. Like one story by her was about a woman whose husband has died, right? And she first is horrified, and then she starts laughing that she's so happy about this.
Her
And then her
husband.
husband comes home.
That's
Yeah.
the one I read.
And then yeah. And then her husband comes home and she meets him and she screams and dies of a heart attack.
I read that
That
story.
is
It was
so-
horrible.
Yeah.
And
So
pointless,
the whole
and I
thing
felt
about that
angry at the
story,
woman.
the thing about that story that I thought was kind of sad was that the humor in it kind of worked. The emotions described were interesting. It was just about a horrible, horrible person thinking a horrible thing, and she's trying to make us feel sympathetic when she's happy her husband died. And I'm like, I don't, the humor kind of works, the irony kind of works, but
She viewed marriage as
I
a
don't like
prison.
her.
Maybe she's a
Yeah.
supervillain. And we should be happy
It's
she's dead.
sad. I think she uses her powers for evil. I think she's like a supervillain.
Yeah.
She could help the world, but she does not.
Using
Well,
the
thank you
powers
for
for-
being with us,
Okay.
Anthony.
Sorry, I need to go. That was very fun.
Good job.
We'll see you again next
No.
time.
Adios.
And now,
Bye,
Yes.
Amos. Anyway,
original Middle English with a dragon.
nope.
Yes.
First, we're
Realism.
going to rail on realism.
Oh,
Yes.
you're right.
Oh, yeah. First realism.
I think
Kill it with fire!
Here's the thing. Some realism.
Kill it
Is
with
not
dragon
just-
fire!
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Realism is not just a lack of the fantastical, because they'll rule out things like, what's his face? A guy like my grandmother, my other grandmother, not the school teacher. She lent me a book of his, Brad Thor, and he writes thrillers.
Oh,
And
okay.
So, like murder mysteries or court dramas,
this
those
one was
ruled out?
like, terrorist group had found a weapon that Hannibal had used that was basically a bioweapon, and they're planning on unleashing it.
Oh, dang. That's not
yeah.
good.
Lovely.
It was fun, but here's the thing. That's not what would be considered realistic fiction. Realistic fiction, it seems almost as that it has no plot,
It has to be
or
as
it has
unfunny as
as
possible.
little plot as possible
Yeah.
to function still as a story.
Yeah. That's what I read.
And it can't have larger than life characters. It can't have someone who is reaching
Things not
for
seen has no
something
plot.
better beyond themselves. It has to just be the same
It's
kind
the
of.
has
idea
to be
that
someone-
heroism doesn't exist. That people can't become heroes.
That's dumb.
Yeah, well, what it is it's remember how I said that the guy who was promoting it, Howells, was a socialist?
Yeah.
This is part of kind of what I'm writing about is the idea of socialism is that it's the ideal state is one of mediocrity where you become
Everyone, I'll put it this way:
Everyone
everyone must be
is
equal, and if you can't raise up those that are lower, you must cut down those that are higher.
and give that to those who are lower. And
Mhm.
and what ends up happening is, as such, it would be naturally averse to heroes, people who make themselves better.
For
It
the
is
sake of others. For the sake of others.
right. It's not just that, because the only way that you can make yourself quote unquote better is by having in the socialist case the government do it for you. That's why you see a lot of these novels touch on a thing I had mentioned before, where I said that the characters don't really have any. I use the word agency. I would almost put determination, where they can change their own fate, basically.
There's nothing about changing
For
this.
some reason, when you're talking about this, I'm reminded of things not seen. I think
Because
my
of
main
the-
problem with that book is that he didn't do anything interesting with his invisibility. Honestly, if I was invisible, I'd go become a spy.
Yeah.
Or take revenge. One of those two.
That's the-
Or be a bank robber.
Or be bank robber,
Yeah,
you know. You have to do something with your invisibility.
Well, the thing is, I heard someone talk where they just, what it is they do one thing and then they just explore all the minute consequences of it. Here's the thing, half of the consequences don't really have anything happen with them. And
Boring.
it's
The
yeah,
consequences don't mean anything because consequences have the point of a consequence is to have more consequences.
right.
It's
Well,
to
the
have
thing
events.
is they're writing. Half of the realists I find is
Consequences. The point of consequences is to come from interesting events. That's
right.
the point. It's to have an
Why is
interesting result
scribbling
to
on?
an interesting event. Right?
Sorry, my computer's turning things on me.
For example, if the consequence is, let's say, someone you don't like wins the election. Let's say you're a Democrat, so a Republican wins the election. Let's say that's the consequence. Now, if the event that caused it is
A guy steps on a butterfly.
no, if it's just something minor, like you picked the wrong candidate, or I don't know, anything. A guy turns invisible. I don't care what it is. If it's
My
something minor,
my dad just texted me something because he's watching this. Hi, Dad. I said that socialism is about the doctrine of mediocrity. He said, "Don't forget that those in charge of determining equality always make sure they're better off than the average."
but
true.
if the same consequence comes from something more interesting, like someone going back in time and stepping on a butterfly in the dinosaur age, then that's a much more interesting story than
Right.
some guy got sick or something.
Well,
You know?
here's the thing. They focus on more internal character development, and granted, there's a place for that. But the thing is, internal character development and character change should lead to external character behavior.
Yes.
If I have a character like the dragon guy in my story, there's some angsty parts in my story, but they lead to him doing things. It's just not him sitting there with his
It only
hands.
matters because you care about the character, for one, and you care about what that character is going to do. If you're just some guy who has wonderful character development, but he doesn't do anything different after that, and he's not an interesting story, I'm sorry,
I can definitely see that with like Great Expectations. Nothing happened with the character.
He just existed and he became more nasty.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is the idea of character development is to show how your character changes by what they do and how they think, and how they think will influence what they do.
Yeah.
They change how they think, and then it changes what they do. But
here's that changes the world around them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, these
but
people
you can't have people.
They just stop at the first stage. They don't even go to. They think that showing how they change how they think. That's the key to character development. That's not. It's change. How do they change the world? By how do they change themselves, and how do they change their thoughts?
Because really, you can have character development without ever hearing what the guy is thinking, because it's the actions that are important.
Yeah. I can actually think of a good example. My Chinese movie I watched randomly the other night, that I fell in love with. There was the character development of the guy, Mayu, however you say it's like M-A-O.
Chinese, no one
but you Mouse, yeah, Mouse of me. But anyway, there's the story, and I'm writing up a fun little review of it, or analysis really. But you don't really get to see a whole lot, and you never really get to see inside his head. But it's his actions and the words he say that he's slightly more in the background. But you can see, if you pay attention, you can see his little actions, and things he does and says, and how that changes and gets him from this point where he doesn't really care about the girl at all to where for her. And it's subtle little actions and things that you can see his development.
Do I have spoilers?
Huh?
Do I have spoilers? Is that what you just said?
No, I never said spoilers.
Then what'd you say?
We didn't hear you. You cut out that word.
Oh, okay. I said.
That's how you said
that the character Mao, whoever he is.
No. To where And then we couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, to where he was running through the streets for her.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it starts out at one place where he's totally pretty much lost all interest or faith in her, to story and through her whole, you can see her arc really well because she's the main focus, and he's more in the background, but you can see his actions and his development change through the small things he says and the small actions he takes. You don't have to be in his head being all angsty. You're not even really in her head being angsty because she does a lot of action too. So
Well, here's the funny thing: is like, I read through this article. There's the article on the Atlantic called "A Reader's Manifesto," and it's about how a lot of literary fiction kind of sucks, modern day stuff, because it's not just that the characters are angsty, but like the narrator is too. It's
yeah.
The guy does not.
I don't like those descriptions when it's first person and you're inside the guy's head and he just thinks for a long time, angstily, and it's just like I don't care.
if I ever write
the-
that, it will be about something that matters, say like romance, where there's still drama. Or in the case of my main character, he's hearing voices in his head, so sometimes when he thinks, he's actually able to have a conversation, which is kind of scary.
That is
But
scary.
what ends up happening is angst is not boring when something is happening, when it is about something that matters. That's why romance works. The thing is, what these people are doing is they're being angsty over things that nobody cares about.
The point of angst is to, let's call it what it is. Dark emotions about dramatic things. That is what.
That's what angst is. I think he dropped off again. Can you hear me? Hello?
He
Okay.
may have dropped off.
Yes. So, well,
I think I had a thought. What was it? One thought is, angst, especially the worst place to put angst is at the beginning of a story. I read the first Miss Marvel comic, I think, for the 2015 Hugo or was it 2016? I think it was 2015 Hugo, whichever it was. And the very beginning is just angst, just the main character girl with angst, but you don't know the situation, you don't care about the character yet, and so my brother if he reads something where he doesn't care about the character and it's just kind of angst like that, he starts wishing death upon the character while he's reading.
That was me for the Scarlet Letter. I'm like, I want these people to suffer. And not in the way that they're going to melodramatically suffer because of fate, but like, please stop. I loved it at the end where it recorded all their deaths, because then I realized I didn't have to read about these characters any longer.
Yeah, angst is definitely only really good if it causes something to happen, or I mean, it's perfectly normal to be angsty about romance because, as Orwell said, it's dark emotions over something dramatic, and what's more dramatic than love?
I was going to say running off of a cliff with a horde of angry natives after you, and no way of escape except a 20-foot, 200-foot drop.
Sorry about
Orville,
that. Oh no, Orville has multiplied.
I'm back.
Oh no, he's good.
Just
okay.
May I?
You're back! Yay!
May I finish what I was saying?
I'm back.
Yes.
Okay. My thought was basically the point of angst, as we are calling it, is it's to show the dark emotions of dark events. So, for example, if someone is sad about the loss of a parent or a sibling or a friend, it's okay to have angst in that situation, because that is when people would really have angst.
But not for too long, because we don't really care.
But the point of angst is to stop being angsty. It's to stop. It's for people in a store. The point is to get over it.
Unless you're Spider-Man, in which case you're perfectly justified because your life sucks.
Even Spider-Man, the point is he powers through it.
Yeah, he does power through it.
that's how angst is supposed to work in a story.
For
It's
them,
suppo-
angst is not a
It
challenge.
should be the angst in a story should be an obstacle that the character should eventually overcome.
It's
It-
a novel
For them, it's
threat.
not an obstacle. It's a it is a way of life, practically.
Ah, they are those who have failed to climb over the mountain of darkness.
Yep.
That was very elegant. Anyway. So,
Don't call what you say elegant.
well, excuse me.
Well, excuse you.
Thank you.
Actually,
You're both excused.
Ladies, gentlemen, I'm gonna have to sign off shortly.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty. Thanks for
But
being
now-
with us,
good talking
Pierce.
with everybody. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for your input, by the way.
Are
You're
you
welcome.
Okay, bye.
Bye,
Yeah.
Mr. Pierce.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
I'm talking
think.
to you.
Well, bye,
And
Pierce.
now, Middle English with a dragon.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap up whatever last thoughts we have, and we'll end with a glorious reciting of the Canterbury
Recitation.
Tales.
The first.
Okay, I think. Corey, you can go first with any other thoughts.
The whole thing with school reading lists is you have to think about. You think about this. It's
Don't have
stories
them.
that are. What?
Kill them all. Kill all school reading lists. They are unnecessary.
I wouldn't say that. It's what it is you have to write stories that are interesting
True.
and that are
You're right.
compelling, and at first they should be those that are interesting to read and entertaining, because that's why you read. Then you can start getting into the kind of deeper stuff like Shakespeare, or say in college someone like Dostoevsky, who is much more heavy with writing. He's part of the great
Books program?
conversation.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Unfortunately, my school doesn't have that. We just have a massive library, so I'm going to be doing that on my own. The thing is, the way it's written now is what is being written is not the stuff that is part of the great conversation. I would almost put some elements of science fiction and fantasy as part of the great conversation.
Because it is. Some people keep
I
talking
think
about
there's a
this.
great conversation of literature, and then there are lesser conversations having to do with writing, but not necessarily with higher human content.
No, I think there's some science fiction and fantasy books that are in the great conversation of
No,
literature.
definitely. They are.
But here's the thing. The things that are shown as being great and amazing are not pieces of
Not
literature that are part of the great conversation. They are things that are written in this very realistic and almost pretentious style, where they're not actually that deep, but they pretend to be.
They want to be deep, but they have nothing to say.
They're not deep,
Exactly.
but they want to sound deep.
Right.
They don't actually sound deep, but they're trying to sound deep.
Mhm.
One of the deepest books I've ever read is so simple a child could read it.
What?
A
Which book was that?
Time. It's good Christian literature. It says
It
some
is-
good stuff about it.
Narnia. Narnia's deep.
Narnia
Yes,
and Tolkien.
Narnia.
I'm
The
reading.
Hobbit
Well,
is good.
Tolkien is a bit challenging to read, but the thing is, unlike literary books, Tolkien's challenging but understandable.
Yeah.
These things are challenging,
Narnia-
but they're incomprehensible.
Narnia, the thing about Narnia is that even though it's a children's book, it elegantly states complex theological concepts.
Like Tasland.
Oh god.
Right, Tashland.
You don't get to make that reference. You never read that book. Neither did I.
No, I read the only book I haven't read was all of Prince Caspian. I've read The Last Battle.
You
Oh.
skipped Prince Caspian?
I read through like half of it, and then I saw the movie, and then I'm like, what happens next? So I went to The Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
Isn't that cheating?
Yes.
Kind of.
Yes, that is
Kind
cheating.
of.
That is cheating. That is just plain up street cheating.
I'll be reading it. I'll go home and I'll read it in a day.
No, it's fine. It's a
Okay.
lot slower than Narnia. I read Narnia.
But
I heard the first 6 books of the series.
I would just say this.
Then I read Narnia, and I started reading Caspian, but it was a lot slower.
We'll just say this. that the books that are chosen for reading are those that literary critics are saying are great, and not those that are actually great.
That have been popular, or like
No,
Lord
literary
of the
books
Rings or
probably
Shakespeare.
they sell barely anything compared to speculative fiction like science fiction and fantasy, or genre
Yeah.
fiction.
Or Monster Hunter. The books, not the game.
All right. Well, let's see. Anybody else have any few things to add?
No, I'm good.
I guess I'll add something because I like to talk. On the subject of school reading, I think the reason why there are two theories as to why my mother believes that in the early 50s or so, the world was invaded by a really dark and really evil idea.
Communism?
Communism.
Don't you mean the 20s? Wasn't that in the
20s.
20s?
You're
It
right,
came in the
wasn't it?
1800s.
Oh yeah.
Like, it started in the 18th century, but really when it people were
No,
talking about
but it
communists
invaded
infiltrating
America in
things
like
in
the 20s
50s.
or something.
20s to like 50s, it started infiltrating things.
Yeah.
And it infiltrated, and it was done on purpose. People helped it infiltrate
Poison
things.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poison America.
And we're
There
still
were no-
feeling the effects of that.
Yep. That's
Thanks,
why the reading list is so bad,
What was the guy who came up with communism?
because their information
Karl Marx.
Thanks, Marx.
because their information comes from people like excuse me. Because their
Marx,
information
Engels, people like that.
yes. And there's also the completely innocent reason of where if you don't read the literary reviewers, where are you going to read to find out what's the good books to get children?
I don't know. People. Talk
But if
to
everyone
people.
does that, then
No, just talk to people who like reading books. Maybe that's the best way to find out what books are good, by talking to people, not critics, just talking to actual people who
Half
actually read
the
books.
critics are people who write these kind of books, and they're kind of all. It's an incestuous piece of con artistry. I'm becoming more and more convinced of it.
Yeah.
I am becoming
I see we have a cynical dragon.
and I am I have a very dark opinion of the world type Pokemon. Anyway, do you have anything to say, April?
Isn't that
yeah, I think the one thing out talking about like the communism kind of socialist thing, one of which some or things like that, is I'm sure the communist is to make everyone nice little compliable
taunts?
means on factories
Drones.
or work in factories. Yeah, just work in
It kinda
factories
sounds like you
and
go and then they
so that's why they can't have stories that have heroes or lift you up or make you want to be better, because you must
You don't
fit
believe you can be lifted
into
up.
your box
or even
working in the
stories
factory.
that are interesting. There are stories like picaresques where, for example, stories about antiheroes where there aren't necessarily heroes. It doesn't necessarily lift you up, but still a good story.
I have read the most accurate description of communism ever.
What?
It is the bad guy from A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh god.
Oh yeah.
The name is is a brain in a jar with mind control who is controlling the entire planet and running it like a machine.
And if you drop the ball, you must be taken away
Tortured.
to be fixed.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you're
Yeah.
sick,
I need to reread that.
there's the doornail. You're not getting back up.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's one of the most horrifying baddies I've ever run across. And I've run across that idea, the idea of if everyone was equal, if everyone was exactly the same, if there were no differences, there would be peace. One of my favorite anime. I've run across the idea before, and the anime
always
countered
evil,
it
by the
with,
way.
and the anime countered that idea with, but that would be boring.
That would be boring, yeah.
Which I thought was
No
a bad
one would
argument,
like
but
card games if everyone
which one
exactly
was
the
that?
same.
Buddy Fight. It's a silly card game
Yeah,
anime.
it's a card game anime. It's great.
They meant to sell toys, but the bad guy
Not towards cards.
cards.
Yeah.
Cards. But
The bad guy is.
the bad guy brings
If you're a fan, if you're a fan of anime, and you don't really care, just watch it. It's good.
It's a silly anime, but it's a good anime. If you think about it, you can learn a lot from it.
And also, if you
Okay.
don't think about it, that makes it even better.
But yeah,
Anyway.
so school reading lists. With the ones we're stuck with, they mostly are meh to suck.
With the exception of Shakespeare and
Yeah, there are some things that have managed to stay alive.
Mostly because
But-
they're
but
so
really, people
old
should-
that people don't want to read.
So,
They're alive
wrap
because
this up?
no one thinks they're dangerous.
should we?
Because,
Up?
yeah.
but I'm gonna say this before we wrap up. The reason why Shakespeare is still around is because everyone in the Western world has recognized him as one of the best writers in the Western world, and B,
Mhm.
he's so old, and the language is so complicated. Most children are not going to read it closely enough to understand what's going on, like Just did. It will also turn them off, despite being a good story, because they will not get into the story because of the language barrier.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why
That's
part of it is
why it's around.
you do kind of need a teacher for that, and that's why I have to thank Lieutenant Short for making Hamlet really come alive for us, showing all the richness and symbolism in it. And I also have to thank her and curse her for what I'm about to show you next as we sign off, because she said, "I'm going to teach you this skill that you will never use again." But because her teacher taught it to her, and because her teacher taught it to her before her, I now know how
We're
to
going
say
to do this.
Yes, the first 18
Yeah.
lines.
Good way to
And now
end
it is
this off.
time for Canterbury Tales with a dragon.
Yes.
For
Well, I'm
Canterbury
not
Tales
going
by
all
Corey.
of the Canterbury Tales. Good heavens, that would take a few
Weeks.
days. I just need to check the order of something because there's two couplets I always get mixed up. Come on, phone. That's...
God, a stream merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. That Jesus Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day.
Here we go. There we
The
go.
will from Satan's
Found we were
All right.
gone astray.
Tidings of comfort and joy.
You're a bit late.
Joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.
Ready? Are you ready?
Ready?
Hey!
Canterbury Tales.
All right. So the little history lesson. The saint, the holy blissful martyr mentioned is Thomas à Becket, who was a priest nominated by a king to be the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Hence why it's
And
called
what ended up-
Canterbury Tales.
Yes. Well, the king nominated him thinking that Thomas à Becket would be a useful puppet, except he wasn't. So what he ended up saying at one point. What?
Corey, do you cut off for a minute? Are you at the beginning?
He
Are
elected
you
him. He elected,
beginning the Canterbury
I'm
Tales?
giving the historical background because it's actually kind of interesting.
he elected him
Okay.
not realizing that he was Thomas freaking a Becket.
Yes, exactly. And what ended up happening was he said in his court, "Will someone rid me of this meddlesome priest?" Not actually asking for anyone to do it, but just letting it be known that whoever would kill him would earn the king's favor. So 3 knights did it. 3 knights killed him. Things didn't go well for the kingdom. But anyway, the story is, let me begin. My phone is off. Priel with his sure sota, the drucht of March hath passed to the rota, embodied every vein in sweet liquor, of which virtue engendered is the floor. When Zephyrus eke with his sweeter breath, in spirit hath in every holten heth, the tendre cruppes and the younge sonna, half in the ram his halve corsi runner. And small fowls muck in melodie, that slepen o'er the nicht, with open ear, so pricketh him not sure and hear courages, then longing folk to goon on pilgrimages. For palmers for to sake is strange strandes, to ferne halways couth in sundry longes, especially from every shear's ender, to England to Canterbury they wender. The holy blissful martyr for to saker, that them hath holpen one that they were saker.
What language was that?
Middle English.
That was Middle English.
I see where J.R. Tolkien got his inspiration from.
Yeah.
Yes.
I understood about half of what you just said.
Exactly.
What just
If it was
happened?
Old English, you would have understood none of it.
Okay.
That's what makes it middle.
If you look at Beowulf, if you find a copy of Beowulf, I think the Seamus Haney
Beowulf that has
translation
the
says this.
Old English and the translation next to each other in it.
The Old English is in completely different characters.
Wow.
Or maybe it's Middle English. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you everyone
They
for
like.
joining.
you.
Is there any more thoughts?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I will stop the broadcast now. Thank you for the 8 people still listening. Hello. And
Good
night, everybody.
See you
I don't know what we'll be talking about it, but it'll be
for
interesting.
the adventures of the Whippersnappers.
Doo-doo-doo.
In the mine.